Hey, what's up guys? Q here, back with another Yu-Gi-Oh video, and today is going to be Gren Maju. Now this is actually a hyper budget version. You could probably pick all of the main deck up for about $40 to $45, including shipping. And then the extra deck is just a few random things for Eater of Millions. But this deck is super powerful, being able to play through multiple negations, multiple hand traps, and being able to OTK like it's no one's business. So without further ado, let's get into it. So starting things off, play 3 copies of Gren Maju Aza, or whatever the heck it's called. So this card gains 400 attack for each banished card. So the thing is, this can work with your opponent too. That's why I play the Topologic engine, because if you can banish all your opponent's cards and then have a bunch of other banished cards, you can gain a ton of attack. And a lot of decks gain advantage off of banishing cards from their graveyard, so you'll be able to get a minuscule amount from just their banished pile alone. Plus, if they play cards like Pot of Desires in their deck, you can gain even more attack, which makes this deck very, very versatile, because they can use their opponent gaining advantage to gain more advantage than they do. Then I play 3 copies of Eater of Millions. Again, this is a budget version, so I do not play Pot of Extravagance, because even though that thing's been reprinted like so much, like it's still $30. So again, you want to keep this deck under 20. You'll be able to use these. Eater of Millions cannot be special normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned by banishing 5 or more cards from your hand, field, and or extra deck face down. So that's kind of why I max out everything in my extra deck, even though we don't use the extra deck, because it's really easy to banish cards. This card cannot be tributed, nor can it be used for anything. So this is super poly proof, and it's kaiju proof. And then this card gains advantage off of Stromberg's effect. It gains Pot of Desires. Any card that banishes face down, it gains a ton of attack off of. Even though it's not as good as Gren Maju, which gains 4 times as much, it still gains quite a bit. Then I play 3 copies of Dimension Shifter. This is a hand trap of the deck. If you have no cards in your graveyard, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to your graveyard until the end of the turn. Any card sent to the graveyard is banished instead. So this is really, really important, because it can stop your opponent's combos dead in their tracks, because a lot of decks nowadays, especially like Eldritch, which is a graveyard heavy deck, if you can pull a Dimension Shifter on them, this card's only like $2 for the Starlight Rare. You can easily out their entire turn. Like, Borreload Savage Dragon is reliant on you having Link monsters in your graveyard. Plus, you gain a ton of advantage off of it because of Gren Maju. Then for some stall cards, I play 3 copies of Inspector Border. This card's actually only like 50 cents. Cannot be normal or special summoned. If either player can, or if you control a monster, then neither player can activate monster effects unless the number of monsters that each player has previously activated is less than the number of monster types currently on the field. So this card is really a hit or miss. Your opponent can pretty easily destroy it, but it's a great lockdown. But if an effect activates that were activated while this monster was face up on the field, so it's just a great lockdown. No monster effects, and this card doesn't. This card doesn't activate, or this deck doesn't activate effects from the extra deck, so this could be a small issue, but it doesn't really matter. because I mean, it doesn't matter. But then I play 2 copies of Danger Dog Man. The thing about this is that it's an option if I need to tribute Inspector Border for anything. But also, it's just the cheapest danger card, and it's a great tech option because it's a special summon or all face-up cards your opponent controls lose 1,000 attack, which isn't terrible, but it could help you with your Gren Maju depending on how much attack it has. Then, for the Stromberg cards, I play one Princess, which allows you to special summon the Pumpkin Carriage. So this is just super basic, like, combo. Like, you don't really special summon a ton in this deck, other than Danger Dogman, Eater of Millions, and Gizmek, which are all cards that are like decently good, but you aren't gonna like run across a situation where you have like a pot of duality and you just really need to use that pot of duality. So play one copy of that and one copy of that. Then I play 3 copies of Gizmek. This card, you can banish 8 cards from the top of your deck face down to special summon this card. And then you can banish 3 cards from your extra deck face down, then target one face-up card on the field, destroy it. So this can actually help destroy your Inspector Border if it comes to it, but you're really not going to be able to do much with Inspector Border. It's very limiting. But this can definitely help just banishing a ton of cards, and you get a huge beater on the field. I use this in my Orcus deck, which it's a great card either way. Then I play 3 copies of Soul Absorption, just because even though it's not exactly the best card, it's still a good card, because if you have Desires, you can gain 5,000 life points, so you'll have a high life point count so that they can't OTK you if it came to it. But I doubt they're going to be OTKing you with Gren Maju deck. So, this is just a neat tech option that's like 50 cents. So, really good card. Then I play 3 copies of Pot of Desires. This is definitely mandatory for this deck. Even if they ash your Pot of Desires, you still activated the cost, which gives your Gren Maju 4,000 attack. Then I play, ignore the fact that there's only 2 copies of Pot of Duality. Pot of Duality, since you don't special summon a ton in this deck, it definitely helps to have Pot of Duality to combo. It can help you get into your Gren Maju, and you just need 1 normal summon in this deck, and then boom, you won. Man, I did it again. Then I play 3 copies of Golden Castle of Stromberg. This card is fairly long text, and the reason I play Pumpkin Carriage and whatever the heck it's called is because this card only combos with cards that have its name listed in its card text, and there are only 3 of them, and the other 2 are pretty expensive. So once per turn during your standby phase, you must banish 10 cards face down from the top of your deck, or this card's destroyed. So this is, if you leave this card on the field, you have a ton of Gren Maju, like effects. Then during the main phase, you can special summon 1 monster from your deck that specifically lists the Castle of Stromberg in its text. You cannot normal summon or set the turn you activated it, even if this card leaves the field. And then you can only activate use the effect once per turn. Then when a monster declares an attack, destroy the attacking monster, and if you do inflict damage to your opponent equal to half its attack. So a lot of people won't pay attention to this card's card text because it's so long, and they'll just attack into you, and that's how you nuke their attacks. Plus, this card is definitely really powerful with this deck because you can summon your Princess and then summon your Pumpkin Carriage and just sit on it. And when they try to attack into your weak monsters, you can spring Castle on them, which is really, really good. That's why I play these 2, because they're the weakest ones, and it helps bait them out into attacking with Stromberg. Then that's it for the field spell. I play 3 copies of Spell Chronicle. Now this card is very different. So you can actually use this at the end of your combos, like when you're in the battle phase. So basically activate this card by sending your entire hand to the graveyard. So this is the really important part. You can activate this after all your combos, which means since it doesn't say minimum 1, you don't have to banish or send any cards to the graveyard, which is really, really good. Banish 5 spells or traps from your deck. Each time your opponent activates a card or activates a spell card, place 1 Chronicle counter on this card. When that spell resolves, then you can remove 2 counters to from this card. Your opponent chooses one of the banished cards. So the thing about this card is you kind of want to leave your cards untouched, because you could banish like a Pot of Desires, a Stromberg, and just do those cards only, which would still gain you advantage, but that's 5 cards that are banished to gain Gren Maju 2000 attack. So that's why I play this. It's an optional search for any of your spell or trap cards, as well as an optional search for as well as an optional 2000 attack for your Gren Maju. Then I play 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Terraforming, 2 Grand Horn of Heaven, just because this is a cheap alternative to like the Solemn Brigade. I do have the Solemn cards, but I felt like not playing them because cheap. Then 2 copies of Mirror Force, because Mirror Force gets the job done. So that is it for the main deck. The main deck is actually fairly powerful and very budget. Like $40 for a Gren Maju deck is like never heard of. But with a reprint of Gizmek Orochi, Dimension Shifter, which was like a $15 card, and even Eater of Millions, like this deck has gotten so much cheaper. And Pot of Desires reprint was definitely needed. It went from like $20 per copy to $1 per copy, which really, really helps. So that's it for the needed main deck. And we'll now move on to the extra deck. This is all completely optional. It's basically just Eater of Millions and Gizmek Orochi fodder. I played 3 copies of Topologic Zeraboros and 3 copies of Topologic Trisbana. These are really the only cards that you want to have here, especially Trisbana, which can banish their spell and trap cards, as well as banishing their monsters. So that really helps. It's definitely more powerful than Zeraboros, but Zeraboros gains attack when he banishes. This is kind of like a bootleg Gren Maju, because this card gains 200 attack for all banished cards. But like you don't have to activate its effect. Like when it's on the field, it can banish all the cards on the field, but it's kind of a risky play to use this card, because you could end up banishing any of your good cards. So yeah. Then Trisbana is really good, because this you can actually trigger yourself. If they have like a full back row and a full front row, you can banish it all, gain a ton of attack. Literally, you gain an extra 4,000 attack just off of them, and then depending on how much you have, you can gain even more. Then you can get rid of their back row super easily, plus inflict burn damage to them, which you can inflict up to 2,500 burn damage and still be able to attack. Then for the extra spots, I play 3 copies of Sandwich, 3 copies of Moki Moki King, and 3 copies of Ojama King, just because they're like the dumbest cards I could think of that have 0 consequence and are like super cheap. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the deck profile. Are there any cards you think I should add to the extra deck to make it a better deck? And I will come out with a non-budget variant of this deck, but I just thought that because I really wanted to get this, that the pure budget version would be really, really good. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Please like, subscribe, share, comment. Let me know what you thought, and let me know if there's anything you think I could do to change this deck. And I will see you in the next Yu-Gi-Oh video. Peace, guys.